Welcome everyone to the regular meeting for the Minneapolis Planning Commission for December 8th, 2025. I'm Chris Meyer, Chair of the Commission. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Chowdhury is absent. Conley?
Present.
Forney?
Here.
Gordon?
Here.
Jones is absent. Shepty is absent. Shepard?
Present.
Wagner is absent. Vice President Baxley?
Here.
And President Meyer.
Here.
There are 6 commissioners present.
We have a quorum. So first we'll move to the minutes from November 17th, 2025. Is there a motion to adopt those minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Those minutes are adopted. Next, we're going to organize the agenda. So I'm going to read through each of the items on our agenda and see if there's anyone who wants to discuss them. Our staff are recommending all items to be on our consent agenda. So if you came to speak against a staff recommendation, when I call out your item, let us know that you want to speak to it. So first we have item number 4, 1001 3rd Avenue South. Would anyone like to speak against the staff? We have someone back there who wants to speak against that one? Okay. So we will discuss item number 4. Next we have item number 5, 3148 41st Avenue South. Would anyone like to speak against the staff recommendation? Okay, let's have someone back here. So we will discuss item number 5. Number 6, 5462 Nicollet Avenue and 5463 Blaisdell Avenue. Would anyone like to speak against the staff recommendation on that one? All right, we'll have that one on consent. Number 7, 4029 28th Avenue South. So everyone's here? Okay, so we will discuss item number 7. Item number 8, 2028 James Avenue North. Would anyone like to speak against the staff recommendation on that one? All right, we'll have 8 on consent. And then finally, number 9, 2034 James Avenue North. Would anyone like to speak against the staff recommendation on item number 9? All right, so we'll have that on consent. So to review, items 4, 5, and 7 will be on discussion. And then items 6, 8, and 9 will be consent. Is there a motion to adopt that agenda?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That is our agenda. All right, so I will open the public hearing for our consent agenda. So if you were here for items number 6, 8, or 9 and you wanted to say something about it, you can do so now. Would anyone like to speak to that? All right, not seeing anyone, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any question or comments on our consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Items 6, 8, and 9 are adopted, so if you came here for those, good luck with your projects. All right, so we will now move to item number 4, our first discussion item, 1001 3rd Avenue South, and staff is Andrew Liska.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. This item for you is a conditional use permit for a communication exchange located at 1001 3rd Street South. The existing structure totals just over 500,005 square feet, 505,000 square feet, and it's a mix of offices and communication exchange today. The applicant is seeking to convert the entire structure into a communication exchange, although the floor plans show a lot of office to remain on the first and second floors. Here's the site bound by 10th Street South, 11th, and then 4th and 3rd. And this structure occupies that entire block. This building was built in the late 1980s and received a certificate of occupancy in 1990. The CO calls the structure an office and computer complex, which is akin to, again, a communications exchange as the zoning code would define. Over time, the floor plans for that use changed. There were times where a majority of that structure was used as a communication exchange. Staff has found building permit records that show some of those lower floors, floors 1, 2, and 3, being used as an office today. The applicant requested a zoning letter. Staff determined that, yes, floors 1, 2, and 3 are offices. 4, 5, and 6 are that communication exchange. And that's what gets us to this CUP application, to authorize that use throughout this entire structure. All of the proposed improvements to the structure are all interior. There's no exterior changes whatsoever. When looking at a conditional use permit, several findings must be met. Staff evaluated those findings in the report and is able to make all of those necessary findings. If any commissioner or member of the public has a concern with any of these specifically, we can kind of highlight that. But again, staff finds that all of the required findings for a CUP are met, and with that recommends approval of this conditional use permit for the property located at 1001 3rd Street South, or 3rd Ave South. And I think that we have the CO here, as I mentioned, calling this a office computer complex, again from 1980, and we have some floor plans. Those are kind of small, and some photos. So I'll be here for any questions. The applicant is also present.
Great. Commissioners, are there any questions for staff before we open the hearing? Not seeing any, so thank you. I will now open the public hearing and we'll hear from the applicant. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Jake Steen with Larkin Hoffman, and we represent the applicant. As staff has indicated, this building was originally built actually as the American Express Data Center, was its official title, in 1990. This is the result of the 2023 zoning code text amendment, which changed a data center over from a permitted use downtown, or a communications exchange, from a permitted to a conditional use. It was only recently, when we requested a zoning letter to confirm the building was still a data center, that we started to get into the discussion of parsing out floor by floor. The truth is, it's always been a mix of offices and computers and support equipment. That's what a data center is. There's a large office component, and will continue to be. But we want to make sure that we don't have to continue to, every time we make a floor plan change, we don't have to ask for a CUP amendment. So in discussing this with staff, we determined that this was the best approach, and in many ways, this is really almost a paperwork cleanup. There are no changes to the building currently proposed, certainly nothing to the exterior, and any changes over time will just be entirely to the interior. So happy to answer any questions, appreciate working with staff on this, and appreciate staff support.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions? So I have one. Just to clarify, you were the one who initiated this?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. We made the application after discussing with staff about what the best way to clean this up is. Really, the discussion is, if the second floor, we wanted to add some computers or support equipment, what do we do? What's the trigger? And, under the current ordinance, if we don't apply for the CUP to include the whole building, we would have to come through and do a CUP amendment every time we expanded on the first floor, or the second floor, or the third floor. A lot of the building was originally built with the infrastructure for this, and I think in the last year, this was the single biggest building permit as we've made some improvements to this building in the city of Minneapolis. So there's a lot of investment in the building already, and we just want to simply continue to operate it the way it has been, with additional flexibility to make modifications as needed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Any additional speakers who would like to come up? Each person can have 2 minutes. Come up and introduce yourself.
Hi there, thank you. My name is Creston Gackle. I reside at the apartment building at 365 Nicollet Mall here in downtown Minneapolis in Ward 3. I'm here in opposition to the approval of a conditional use permit for a data center or communications exchange. I would ask the commission to send the proposal back to city staff for further study regarding the utility usage and equity impact of the proposal. This project appears to be for a smaller data center not subject to recent legislative restrictions on large data centers. I do not believe that the current study and supportive letter adequately address the impact on utility usage posed by this proposal, including for internet or data. There is no anticipation of costs spread to consumers from higher usage of water, electricity, or internet bandwidth. I also do not believe it is fair to compare data usage to historical use from 1990, given advances in that area and the magnitude and density of data equipment. I believe it is therefore in question whether the proposal would be detrimental to the general welfare based on utility usage. And to conclude, and most importantly, I do not believe the permit should be allowed under conditional use criterion 5. I do not see how an out-of-state entity which claims Minneapolis in its LLC name, but no staff or real presence here, can be consistent with Development Policy 23 of the Minneapolis 2040 Plan. There are no promises of employment here, and I would be concerned how this could be consistent with any of Development Policy 23, how this project serves the public or builds equity when it seems to be just adding capacity to and enriching an out-of-state entity with no real ties to Minnesota and no defined benefits to Minneapolis or its residents. I appreciate the Commission's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments, discussion, or motions? Commissioner Conley? Yes. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my question is to staff, and I wondered about how we might have updated policy procedures, the way that we look at communication exchanges or data centers, given that these are popping up. It's a relatively new issue, and there is a cost to utilities. Thank you.
Commissioner Conley, so there is a zoning code text amendment being studied right now by our code development team that's taking a deeper look into data centers, particularly larger ones that could potentially be established in the city, looking at a lot of the things that the speaker just brought up in terms of, energy usage, water, utility, that sort of thing. There's also been legislation introduced at the state level. This one is well below any sort of need for environmental review, but because this one is existing and has been existing in the city since this building was constructed, this isn't one that is necessarily going to be scrutinized as part of that zoning code text amendment work. It's not one where we thought we needed to slow down and take a closer look at this. This is really more of a procedural issue. As noted, the building permit history on this one is very clear for the upper floors of the building having rights to a data center. It was less clear on the lower floors, and with that, we weren't able to issue a zoning letter to the applicant when requested that said the lower floors had rights to this use, and it's a communication exchange in the code. So this is really cleaning that up because our permit history was not perfectly clear about the use of floors 1, 2, 3. So you will likely be seeing something from our code development team in the next year about data centers overall that will take a look at a lot of the potential offsite impacts of those uses.
Mr. President, thank you. That's really great clarification. I'm happy to hear that that is something that's being explored right now. I guess I think the applicant would need to come back to us, though, if the use changes, right? So if there's an expansion or if the entire building is used as a data center, then that's a different agenda item before us.
That's what's in front of you right now. So the use is in the building right now.
For the entire building, not just the certain floors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the part that we're cleaning up as part of this application. Because our building permit history while we have a certificate of occupancy from when the building was first opened that references a computer complex of the entire building, our permit history was not perfectly clear about which floors the building contained a communication exchange on. So this is essentially cleaning that up.
Wonderful. And I think I'll just close with just a follow-up, and I think that it may be worth the consideration for some of the smaller ones that, when I think data centers, when we think data centers, we think the big, large footprints that have a massive impact on water, et cetera. But I think it might benefit the city to know what the usage might be in this area of downtown for this building in the future. So I get the cleanup is necessary. It's procedural to bring things up from 1990 to 2025, but it still might be something to look into in the future. So thank you.
I have a different question for staff. Can one of you remind us what policy 23 is that the testifier spoke to? I don't have all the numbers, all the policies memorized by number, but if someone can look that up and read it for us.
Nor do I. I would have to look it up.
Okay.
Sadly, the staff report doesn't reference policy 23 either, so I don't have that in front of me either.
Okay. Any other discussion while I look that up?
So I'm seeing policy 23 is about coordinated development strategies,
Okay.
which is more about like interdepartmental and interagency coordination teams. So it's possible that's not the one.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll share my thoughts then. I feel like this was something that the applicant was proactively looking to do. It's an existing building. There's not any exterior changes. I thank the testifier for drawing attention to the energy and water usage of data centers. I think that would be a lot more applicable to a new one that was being considered. But for cleaning up the existing zoning for this, I think I'm inclined to approve this. Are there any other discussion from the commissioners? Would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Shepherd?
I would agree, Mr. President, that both data and power are infrastructure improvements which downtown is only going to benefit from. And I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? All right, not seeing any. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Conley?
Aye.
Forney?
Aye.
Gordon?
Aye.
Shepherd?
Aye.
Vice President Baxley?
Aye.
And President Meyer.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and 0 nays.
That is adopted. All right, next we'll move to 3148 41st Avenue South. And staff is Aspen Flans.
Good evening, Chair, Commission, Aspen Flans, City Planner. The application before you today is for 3148 41st Avenue South, a conditional use permit to allow for a community center in the UN2 Urban Neighborhood District. There is no new construction proposed as part of this community center. It is simply a change of use from an existing religious institutional building that's been on the property since the early 1900s to a new community center, which is still a civic and institutional use. The zoning code defines a community center as an establishment operated by a nonprofit organization or government agency, which includes recreational and cultural facilities, meetings rooms, social service facilities, and public health facilities, or any combination thereof, and that is not a public park. Community center uses may include after-school programs and tutoring. Again, our use table indicates that with a conditional use permit, a community center is allowed in UN2. Some existing photos of the site show this Gothic Revival church with a substantial addition in the rear, which has again been part of the property for almost 100 years. That was used as a Sunday school. And so I'll just flip through these photos. There is an alleyway in the rear of the property, and there is no off-street parking currently, nor is any off-street parking proposed as part of this application. On the north side of the property, this is a corner lot. On the north side, there is a substantial green space that's just an open grassy area with a few mature trees. The site plan shows, I flipped it, so north is on the right side of the screen here. The existing site plan shows, again, it's a substantially sized lot, almost 16,000 square feet of lot area. The building footprint is just over 5,000 square feet, but the total gross floor area is around 11,000. The applicant does own the lot north of this, but that is not included with this proposal. So that lot just has, again, a mature tree and a small shed building. But the community center application use ahead of you is just for the existing site that I've outlined in red here. The floor plans provided just show that the existing building footprint will be maintained, so there's some large meeting areas in the lower level of the existing building. And the rear addition has several offices, which again were formerly used as classrooms, and then a large meeting area. The applicant, because this proposal would require a building permit to change the occupancy of the building, the applicant is proposing an ADA lift, which would create a new exterior entrance on the front facing 41st Avenue South. And then that would be accessible from the public sidewalk. And then with a change of use, bicycle parking is required. So there will be a bicycle rack installed on the south end of the site along 32nd Street. There was also a separate permit to upgrade the commercial kitchen that exists in the building. The 6 findings required for a conditional use permit, staff finds as all met. So there's more details about that in the staff report, but I can speak to these more substantially if there are questions. But given that the previous use of a church is substantially similar to a community center, there are no exterior changes save the new ADA entrance and installation of bike parking, and that the applicant is proposing a nonprofit to operate the building, staff found that this meets all the findings. And so we recommend approval of the conditional use permit to allow for the community center in the UN2 Urban Neighborhood District, subject to the condition that it is recorded with Hennepin County. And I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Right. Thank you, Aspen. I'll now open the public hearing. Do we have the applicant with us? No applicant? Oh. If you would like, you can introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
Thank you. Forgive my voice. Some sort of, I don't know whether it's not clear. My name is Ali Gashan, and I'm the executive director of the nonprofit that's running this facility, and I am ready to answer any questions. What we're doing already in our St. Paul office is in line in what we be doing here. So basically it's so far tutoring. Outside tutoring, we do ADR, which is basically bringing families and individuals, and we have ADR team, and I don't see any 25, 30 people usually coming in together. And so in terms of traffic, noise, all the main concerns, I don't participate in any situation that can cause the neighbor or any situation that out of line of what was said. But if any questions, I will definitely willing to.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Not seeing any? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Other speakers? Each person can have 2 minutes. I know there were a few hands that were raised back here. Yep, go ahead and come to the podium, introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Gonzalez, and I'm a resident of Cooper neighborhood, just on the other side of the church. So I've lived there for 30 years, have seen what the congregation was before, what it is going to be now. I'm not opposed to as long as there's some parking. As you saw from the diagram, there is a place where they could put a parking lot in. There is going to be increased traffic. I don't believe him when he says there's only going to be 25 or 30 people showing up at this community hall. If they don't provide a parking lot, which they do have the room for, then they should at least provide parking permits for the residents around there. We've already run into problems on 41st and Lake with the increase in traffic from High-Low Diner, the coffee shop that's near there. It's nearly impossible to see traffic coming out of there, and I really hate to see this happen to that corner of 32nd Street and 41st. The other issue I have right now is that I've seen that over the last year, I believe they purchased it in August of 2024, they have not been maintaining this building. They've been fined over $15,000 in fees that have been assessed because they were not cleaning up the rubbish, they weren't cleaning the sidewalks. So if that's indicative of how they're going to maintain this building, then I pose this conditional permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Chu, and I am a resident in the Cooper neighborhood as well. I and many others walk by this church with our dogs every day. The first change I noticed about this property after the sale to AW Homes Limited in 2024 is that I couldn't walk next to the church very much in the winter due to the persistence of unshoveled sidewalks. After reviewing the application for the proposed community center, which was uploaded only a few days ago, I was struck by the scale of what is being proposed and the lack of detail in how such a plan could be implemented. The application includes installation of a new commercial kitchen and elevator. The application mentions a wide range of proposed programs, including English classes, citizenship preparation, job readiness, after-school activities, and health education. For activities and services at this level, a proven track record is essential. With that in mind, I'd like to highlight two issues that I believe deserve the Commission's attention: the lack of complete, verifiable information in the submitted plan, and the landlord's track record to date. First, regarding Volunteer of Somalia, the nonprofit cited throughout the application, I expected to find an EIN so I could review its Form 990 filings. For a project of this scale, it's reasonable to expect partnership with an established nonprofit, one with a documented history of consistent reportable funding above the IRS's $50,000 annual filing threshold. Yet, Volunteer of Somalia does not appear in any publicly searchable registry, which raises questions about the organization's existence and capacity. Second, the condition and operations of the property under the current landlord warrant consideration. Over the past several months, there have been a series of concerning signs posted in the windows along the 32nd Street East side. Notices of unpaid bills, a bright red Stop All Work sign that stayed up for an extended period. When requesting a conditional permit, burden of proof should rest with the applicant. I am hoping that the city will consider strengthening its process and ask that the applicant revise its application to clearly demonstrate capacity to deliver it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello. My name is Tom Druck. I'm a Cooper resident and a neighbor. As a neighbor who regularly bikes and uses public transportation, I'm concerned with how this application characterizes the neighborhood's transit access and biking infrastructure. On page 1 of the application, it states, there's a small number of commercial, civic, and institutional uses. Minnehaha Academy, Cooper Elementary School are located in the area. Several bike routes and lanes are present, including 32nd Street, 38th Avenue, 43rd Avenue, 44th Avenue. The area is served by two bus transit routes, the B Line on Lake Street and Route 9 on 36th Avenue and 34th Street. This description suggests that the property is well located for bus and bike users. In reality, not a single building, bus stop, or active bike lane lies within the 8-block map shown on page 2 of the application. There are no bus stops near this property. The B Line's only stop in the Cooper neighborhood, 41st Avenue South and Lake Street, is more than 2,000 feet away. The second stop referenced in the application, 36th Avenue South and 34th Street East, is outside of the Cooper neighborhood and even farther from the property at 3,000 feet away. There are also no active bike lanes nearby. According to the City of Minneapolis's All Ages and Abilities Biking Network Plan, none of the streets listed in the application, 32nd Street, 38th Avenue, 43rd Avenue, and 44th Avenue, are active bike routes. Two of these streets are identified as possible near-term low-stress bikeways, but the city marks them as highly difficult to complete before 2030. This property is not well served by public transportation or bike infrastructure. Any references to this property or project's alignment with the city's 2040 plan in this regard should be reevaluated and corrected. I do not believe attendees will walk over 2,000 feet from a bus stop, nor do I expect the proposed bike rack to see meaningful use. The added on-street parking demand will burden nearby residents, and increased traffic from events will further endanger cyclists like myself. Thank you. And there's some figures on the back if you have the thing.
Okay, you can give that to our clerk over there if you'd like.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Was there anyone else who wanted to? Welcome. Introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm David Gowan. I'm not as well spoken as everybody else, but I live on the direct opposite southeast corner of where this building is, and like a lot of other people have mentioned, the parking is a concern. 41st Street already has a lot of cars that are consistently parked there, and also what the hours of activity would be for this building. I didn't see anything listed before, so just, mainly just a concern about parking and how that would be handled. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Welcome. Introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Katie Malumbi. I am a Cooper resident as well, live 2 blocks away from the proposed site. Given the broad scope of programs, can the applicant provide a phased plan detailing the activities which will be held, the hours of operation, and how staffing will be structured and funded? I was not able to see any breakdown. Will this function as an open community center serving all of the residents of the community, or as a cultural service center with defined targeted population? Though both can be valuable, the distinction and clarification matters for our community. I would like to see a place where all residents and nearby people can utilize this space. I am not opposed to the idea of a community center that's culturally informed, but I believe that approval should be contingent upon a revised application that outlines operational plans that ties needs to the neighborhood, programming schedules and capacity limits, an inclusive mission statement, expected parking demand and mitigation strategies, communication, engagement and feedback processes, maintenance and compliance commitments, measurable time-based deliverables. A community center can be a valuable asset, and my hope is that if approved, this project is implemented in a way that is transparent, inclusive, accountable, and responsive to the neighborhood and the community that it serves. I encourage the commission to request additional details and measurable plans before granting approval here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, if there is one. Go ahead. Welcome, introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Eric Haugen, and I live on the block. I'm about 2 blocks away on 41st Avenue. Like others here, I also express concern over parking. This parking here is pretty limited on our street, and the ability for us to find parking as is when winter and things come up can be challenging. So it's a big concern that I haven't heard any addressed yet fully from the applicant. The other concern I have is that this is outlined as a community center, but the person who's proposing this, he hasn't proposed what kind of community. I want to know, will this be for everyone in the community? What kind of outreach are you going to be doing? Can I be involved? I haven't had any communication in that regard. He might have been, but I've missed it, but I haven't received anything like that. So I'd like to know what that's going to look like. If it's going to be truly a community center, then let's involve the community and have those conversations. And from my understanding, it has not happened yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead. Welcome, introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
My name is Carl Bartel. I'm here with my husband, Ted Buell. We live in the house next door to the mentioned property. I just want to reiterate the concerns that most everyone has shared already. Concerns about parking, concerns about the upkeep of the property. We've seen a pattern of neglect on this property, including a break-in that took several days for the owner to repair in a reasonable fashion. He has not been forthcoming with us. We sent him an email a year ago when he first bought the property, voicing our concerns about pollution, litter, security, all these things. Aspen, we sent a copy of that email to them. And that's the gist of it, is we're just concerned that with this pattern of neglect and kind of mild disrespect for the neighborhood, we're concerned that the running of this facility is going to be in line with that kind of neglect. So that is our concern, and we're hoping that is addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, I'm not seeing any. Before I close the hearing, commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant or any testifiers before we close the hearing? All right, I will close the public hearing. Is there a discussion or a motion from any commissioners? Commissioner Conley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to clarify that for what the applicant is applying for, there's 6 conditions that need to be met. I think I counted 6. And from the staff, it appears that all requirements have been met for the conditional use permit, which is what we have to vote on today. I will say that there are city pathways for reporting blighted properties, for reporting snow not being shoveled, et cetera. So I want to make sure that residents know that there are ways to report things like that. I also want to mention, just as a comment, that it's really, really important when you purchase a property for the community, in the community, to have a really good partnership with the community. Just in general, I would say that to anybody coming in, purchasing and building, to be a part of that community. Community centers in and of themselves are structures that help define neighborhoods, that help bring neighborhoods together. So reestablishing that relationship will be critical, I think, to this project moving forward. I have seen that this is sometimes a first step to other agenda items that we might see in the future. So when projects like this come back for other permits or other requirements or building additions, et cetera, knowing that you've got the community on your side for that really helps us in making our decisions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Shepard?
Just an observation, I haven't heard any concern about Bethlehem Covenant not having an off-street parking capacity either. And I get that that does induce a good amount of parking on the street. I bike through there all the time. I'm also a Cooper resident. But that's a problem I'm not seeing as unique to this particular. We have a number of facilities in our neighborhood with the same capacity or more, and that doesn't seem to be a concern for them. And I don't really see it as being a concern here either. So I would, again, concur that there are 6 conditions and they've met them, and there are other city avenues for addressing concerns with the operation of the property itself. So I would move this as written.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I'll give my comments. So we heard some pretty concerning things about the property owner here today about litter and lack of snow shoveling. One speaker said that they were fined $15,000 with that. So that it sounds like they are being appropriately penalized for that if they have been fined for that. So I would urge the applicant to address those issues if that's correct, to shovel the sidewalks, to pick up the litter, to be engaged with the community. As to parking, I sympathize with the concerns that people have brought up, but the city's adopted climate policies actively discourage more parking from being built. So that there's no mechanism where that could be included today. If anything, the Planning Commission tries to get applicants to build less parking because that brings more traffic into the neighborhood. And the existing site is already there. When it was used before, it presumably had parking issues with that, as Commissioner Shepherd was mentioning. The only external changes that are being made here are the ADA ramp and the bike racks, and those seem to be clear improvements. And I just want to clarify for the public, what a conditional use permit is. The assumption is if the applicant meets certain requirements that are laid out, that we automatically give the CUP. There's not a lot of discretion for the city to reject one. It's not like a variance where there's a lot more discretion if they choose. So I do feel that they have met this. An appropriate use of a conditional use permit is to apply conditions. So if commissioners have any ideas on particular conditions to impose, I mean, it could be something around the hours of operation or something, but at this point, I'm inclined to go with the staff recommendation and approve the motion that's on the table. But I would be open to conditions if people have them. Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. I agree with all that's been said up here and everything. It is not something that is a requirement, but I really hope that the owners owning the property to the north respect the one mature tree that is there. And at some point in time, there will be some conditions regarding the preservation of trees, and I really just hope that they will honor the importance of that tree. Thank you.
And that was a comment, you don't want to make a condition out of that? I don't know. I'm not actually familiar with which tree you're talking about, but okay. Okay, any other comments or motions from commissioners? All right, so we've got the motion on the table. I'm not seeing anyone else. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Conley.
Aye.
Forney.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Shepherd.
Aye.
Vice President Baxley.
Aye.
And President Meyer.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Good luck with your project. Please shovel your sidewalks and pick up the trash and engage with your neighbors. Thank you. All right, our last item is item number 7, 4029 28th Avenue South. And staff is Aaron Hanauer. Did I have this off?
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. For Roosevelt High School, they are proposing a 17,600 square foot addition on the east side of the building near 30th Avenue and 40th Street. The proposed building and the project require 4 applications, a variance for the building placement. Here's some renderings of the building with 30th Avenue being here, 40th Street North being here. So again, up on this image, this would be 30th and 40th. The project requires 4 land use applications. A variance for that building placement along 40th Street, from reducing the setback from 10 feet to 1 foot in the corner side yard, and that would be in line with the existing building that's been there since the 1960s. Parking, to allow parking in the front yard or between the building and the street along 30th Avenue. However, show you that's an existing condition as well. Just with the reconfiguration of the parking lot, staff wanted to have this be a noted land use application, a variance, given that the parking spaces would be closer, or not closer, but the parking lights and parking spaces would be fronting 30th Avenue more than they do currently. Some positives, however, a 7-foot landscape buffer and screening would be added to the 30th Avenue frontage. All right, and then third is a wall sign that they're proposing along 30th Avenue. A school in the RM1 district is allowed one 32-square-foot wall sign. There's a large wall sign for Roosevelt Gym that's along this elevation that's currently there. The applicant would like a second wall sign to note where the main entrance is for the new career technical education program that they're proposing. And fourth is site plan review, and that we just trying to go through with a building this size, it required that site plan review application. CPED supportive of the land use applications that the applicants proposed. I've been in touch with a couple of the neighbors in terms of possible concerns. I know that some of it may be with the public noticing or just maybe not everyone being aware, and just heard also concerns about the parking situation with current conditions and possibly with the proposed project expansion. But if it's okay, I could leave it there and answer questions that you might have for staff at this time.
Yep. Are there any questions for staff? All right, thank you, Aaron. I'll open public hearing. Do we have the applicant with us today? Welcome, introduce yourself. And if you'd like, you can tell us about your project, or you can just answer questions if you like.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Chris Lobbs. I'm a project architect with LSE Architects, and I'm representing the applicant today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the project itself. The purpose of it is Minneapolis Public Schools operates their Career Technical Education Center. It's a separate high school from all their other programs that exists in 3 locations. North High School, which recently, through its renovation, was its Career Technical Education Center. Edison High School, which just completed their Career Technical Education Center, now here at Roosevelt High School. The purpose is that students from any high school can opt in to take classes for specific career and technical education programs, or they'll then take a bus from their current school, which may or may not be Roosevelt High School, come take their class there, and then be bused back to their regular high school to complete their day. For that reason, there aren't a lot of students that are going to be necessarily driving to this school, as well as, unless they're already going to Roosevelt. And the students aren't going to be here for the whole day. They're just going to be coming for one class and then leaving. This is a really important program to Minneapolis Public Schools. It's a program that they really feel is important for building job training skills for it, and they're investing this money into producing really high quality welding classes, auto classes, small engines, and machining. This is also where the Career Technical Education District staff will be. As part of it, we're building a new storm shelter to comply with new codes. And then the reality is it's a real challenge. The building's over 100 years old. It was put in the middle of a nearly 2-block site. So we tried as much as possible to meet the intent of the 2040 code, where we couldn't actually meet it by the letter. For instance, increasing that landscaping buffer, increasing the amount of landscaping to reduce headlights coming off of the site, creating materials that are aligning with the rest of the building, and also trying to increase the amount of glazing that's going on to the city around it so that you have those active functions seen. So that's really the intent of the project, if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you. All right. Each speaker can have 2 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Carla Nielsen. I reside in the 3900 block of 30th Avenue South and have for over 30 years. My concern is the overall lack of community engagement with we who live, me as a resident and the other businesses around us. I'm not a business. It's unfortunate that Councilmember Chowdhury is not here. This is right in the smack dab in the middle of her ward. So when I got this letter and found out I was one of very few households, only based on, I think it was 350 square feet around the school, I was like, what? That it wasn't more extensive. Roosevelt is a big neighbor to us. 13.5 acres is that school. It's a plus. I'm a non-parent. Obviously, this educational opportunity, a place for kids to learn these skills of welding, machinery, etc. I mean, obviously, that's a plus. The fact that when I looked at the LSE script, it showed that there would be more trees. That is a plus over there. But the loss of 60 parking spots, and that is a mix of teachers and students that are parking there, that is appalling. We're a highly residential area, and many of the homes have 2 and 3 cars by themselves. I'm also wondering what type of safety screening devices will be put in place on the 30th Ave entrance. School safety for all ages of children is important. The graphics from LSE is not showing bike racks or on 30th Ave entrance for that. I personally do not think this proposal is ready to be affirmed, given the lack of community engagement. Thank you for your public service.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify? Did you want to? Welcome. Introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jen Newberg, and I live on 29th Avenue, in between 39th and 40th Street. And I have a student or an alumni who went to the community ed or the technical school to take automotive and is now in his second year at university learning to build Formula One race cars. So I value this education. I also have a current student at Roosevelt. Given Roosevelt's current demographics of their younger classes of students, the elimination of the teacher parking lot, an entire parking lot at Roosevelt, will greatly impact parking around the school. And I didn't necessarily see that mentioned, or the fact that an entire parking lot is leaving the school that's used by Roosevelt.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? All right, not seeing any, but I have a question for the applicant, if you can come back up. Can you just tell us about the bike parking and specifically on 30th Avenue, and any response you have to the safety screening devices?
Yeah, I can answer a couple of these. The bike racks, there are bike racks being added. I do see they're not in the rendering. That's just an omission. But there are, I believe it's 8 or 9 bike racks being added here. Also around the building, there are well over 100 bike racks just that are serving the general school itself. But we're adding 3 classrooms to it. And I believe, and I don't have the application in front of me, but we exceed the number that are required by the zoning code for an addition of classrooms. In terms of the safety, we are adding a new secure entry to the building, so we'll be following the Minneapolis Public Schools standards on secure entry into the school itself. Essentially, it'll be buzzed in through each set of doors.
Okay, so the 30th Avenue one is not on the rendering, so can we add a condition that would you be receptive to a condition that would clarify that?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to add that.
Kimberly, do you have a suggestion on how we would phrase that, just to?
Well, I'm just looking to Aaron. It's not on the rendering, but is it on the site plan or elsewhere accounted for in the application materials? 'Cause if so, then we wouldn't need a condition.
It's okay if I go back. It's forward. Yeah, so they're located right here as you come in.
Okay.
Just adjacent to the entrance.
As long as staff feel it's clear that that is included in the staff recommendation, I'm fine with that. Okay. Last chance for anyone? Did you have a question you wanted to ask the applicant?
Please, yes.
Okay, if you want to come back up, we have another before we close the hearing.
Sorry, can you talk to us about any traffic demand management plans that were developed during the design?
There wasn't a specific traffic demand management plan required as part of it, so we do not have one here. And since there's no parking minimum, we weren't required to make up the parking that we lost here.
But you had some discussions, well, obviously, with MPS.
Yeah,
about the loss
so
of those
MPS
60.
has their transportation plan as they move through this. Again, for most of the students who are actually coming to this center, they're going to be coming on a bus from their regular high school. So they're not necessarily going to be parking here. So any demand would be just for people who are currently at Roosevelt High School.
In terms of staff? Is this a staff parking only that you have?
I believe currently, right now, they operate this parking lot here as staff only, correct.
And they are unconcerned with that?
And they're not concerned with losing that parking.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there any discussion or a motion? Oh, sorry, the public hearing is closed. Commissioners. Commissioner Conley.
This is only a comment, Mr. President. I'm excited about these changes to Roosevelt. I think that this is a really great program, and Roosevelt is just a solid institution in the neighborhood over there. I'm actually excited to hear that the staff weren't concerned about the loss of parking, because I saw the rendering show that parking lot is cut in half. I think this will be a benefit not only to the community, especially with the addition of the trees, the addition of the 7-foot, I think it was, buffer, and just to the students themselves. So I'm excited to support this today. Thank you. I will move to approve it.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I'll speak to it as well. And at first, I'll just note, the city council is currently reviewing their budget. It's probably the busiest week of the year for them, so I imagine that is where Councilmember Chowdhury is at. But it does sound like there could be more engagement with the neighbors around, but I think this is a good project that's very in line with our 2040 plan, and the variances seem reasonable. I know that parking is a frequent concern, but as I noted for the last application, the city's policy is to, the climate policy is to try to reduce parking as much as possible, and whenever possible, try to get people to bus or bike, and it's great that they're busing the kids to the school. So that is very in line with this, so I will definitely vote to approve this. Any other commissioners wish to comment or make any amendment? All right, not seeing any. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Conley.
Aye.
Forney.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Shepherd.
Aye.
Vice President Baxley.
Aye.
And President Meyer.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
All right, that is approved. Good luck with your project. And that is our last item for the day. We don't have any committee of the whole this week. And our next full meeting will be January 5th of 2026. Are there any updates from staff or commissioners?
Yes, so updates out of the Biz Committee of the City Council. So I mentioned at our last meeting that we did receive an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the project at 4109 and 4113 Sheridan. That appeal was denied by the Biz Committee of the City Council. There was a condition of approval added just asking for some additional landscaping on that property, and that goes to the full City Council this week. Planning Commission appointments were also on that agenda, so happy to say that Commissioners Wagner, Jones, and Shepherd were moved forward for reappointments, and that will also go to the full City Council this week.
Great. Anyone else? Not seeing any, so we are adjourned. Thank you.